The Big Bird. It was 10:30 p.m. on January 14, 1976, and Armando Grimaldo sat on the courtyard of his mother-in-law's house in the northern part of Raymondville, Texas. He had come to visit his wife Christina, who had moved back in with her mother, and was already asleep. Grimaldo was on the verge of having an all-too-close encounter with a creature from another world. As I turned to look at the other side of the house, he later recounted, I felt myself being grabbed by something that had large claws. I turned around and, freeing myself, began to run. I had never been afraid of anything before, but that time I was really scared, never been so scared in my life. Something had swooped down from the sky, and it was something Grimaldo had never seen before and would never want to see again. It was as tall as he was, about 5 feet 7 inches, and had a wingspan of 10 feet, 3.5 feet. Its skin was dark brown, almost blackish, similar to leather, and was featherless. Its eyes were red and huge. Grimaldo screamed and tried to run, but panicked, stumbled and fell face forward. As he struggled to get up, he could feel his clothes being torn by the monster's claws. He managed to sneak under a tree, and his attacker, who was now gasping for breath, flew off into the night. Christina was awakened by her husband's cries, and was on her way downstairs when she heard him rush into the house, in some kind of shock. Unable to speak coherently, he kept muttering pájaro, bird, in Spanish. He was taken to Willacy County Hospital and discharged half an hour later when doctors found that he had no injuries. Grimaldo was probably luckier than Joe Suarez's goat. Something tore it apart in the early hours of December 26. The animal had been left tied in a pen behind Suarez's barn in Raymondville. There were no human footprints around the carcass, and police could not figure out how the beast had been killed. Something had invaded the Rio Grande Valley. Before it disappeared about a month later, local good-timers had christened it the Big Bird. To most people it was a facetious subject, but those who had seen it did not feel like laughing about it. Such a creature crashed into Alberico Guajardo's car in nearby Brownsville. Guajardo came out of the house, climbed into his little garden car, turned on his headlights and saw what he described as something from another planet. As soon as it was hit by the light of the headlights, the creature stood up and stared at him with blazing red eyes. Guajardo, paralyzed with fear, could only turn to look at the monster, which had bat-like wings folded over its shoulders and continuously emitted from its throat a horrible cry. Finally, after 2 or 3 minutes, the animal backed a meter to a driveway and disappeared into the darkness. Another encounter with the creature occurred on February 24 in San Antonio, where 3 elementary school teachers driving to work on an isolated road southwest of the city spotted a huge bird with a wingspan of 5 or 6 meters, if not more. It flew so low that when it suddenly descended on the car its shadow covered the entire road. As the 3 watched the bizarre creature fly by, they saw another one in the distance circling above a herd. It looked, they said, like an outsized gull. Later, the teachers scribbled through books to try to identify the first bird they had seen, and they succeeded. The uniqueness lay in the fact that it was the pteranodon, a flying dinosaur that had been extinct for 150 million years. They were not the only South Texans convinced they had seen a prehistoric winged reptile. Just a month earlier 2 Brownsville sisters, Libby and Deanie Ford, spotted a big black bird at a pond. The creature was as tall as they were and had a bat-like snout. Later, when they saw in a book the figure of a pteranodon, they concluded that it was just what they had seen. Fear of the great bird subsided in early 1976, but the creature would make another appearance in the Rio Grande Valley. On September 14, 1982, James Thompson, an ambulance mechanic from Harbinger, saw a large bird-like object fly over Highway 100 at a distance of about 500 yards. It was 3:55 a.m. I expected it to land like a model airplane, Thompson declared to the Valley Morning Star. I thought precisely that it was a model, but it flapped its wings just enough to keep itself above the grass. It had a rough black or grayish skin, no feathers, I'm sure. I watched it as it flew away. It was, he would later realize, a pterodactyl-like bird. The International Society for Cryptozoology, a scientific organization that scrutinizes reports of sightings of unknown or supposedly extinct animals, observed that encounters with this large bird, this pterodactyl, occurred only 300 kilometers east of Mexico's eastern Sierra Madre, one of the least explored regions in North America.